I'm seeing all these rumors flying about the Phillies. I'm seeing all these trade rumors flying about the Phillies. And I can't get excited because I am reminded constantly that Dave Dombrowski has said a bunch of times that he likes their team. He thinks that the outfield is fine. He thinks that the lineup is fine. He thinks the pitching staff is fine. He thinks that the bullpen is fine. And so I can't even begin to get myself excited. Do you remember the Pat Gillick years, right? The Pat Gillick years where we used to, we always heard stand pat. That was his thing. And you'd get excited about a trade deadline, but then he wouldn't really do much, right? That was his reputation coming into Philadelphia. Dave Dombrowski was supposed to be like big balls Dave Dombrowski. He was supposed to be a guy who comes in here and like lights the farm system on fire to go get guys to like try to win a World Series. And it's funny because everybody that the Phillies are currently rumored to be in on, you see names get floated out there, like Mick Abel's name has gotten floated out there, Aiden Miller's name has gotten floated out there, Andrew Painter's name is out there, Justin Crawford's name is out there. And I keep just wondering, is there a mandate from ownership to not burn the farm system to the ground? Because at this point, they have been so overly conservative when it comes to the trade market that it almost makes me think there has to be a mandate. Like Dave Dombrowski in the last decade has never been as conservative as he seems to be right now with the Phillies. And so it almost makes one wonder, is ownership kind of telling him, look, I get that we want to compete this year. Yes, we want to win a World Series, but don't burn some of these prospects that we think are going to help us as we lose a few players in the upcoming offseason and the offseason beyond that. Like, at this moment, I am actually going to go a little bit off script here because I forgot about it. And I saw it yesterday, and it honestly kind of pissed me off. So, Jeff Passan, or Passan. Jeff Passan? It's Passan. I always want to call him Passan. He put a thing out about how the Phillies window is apparently closing. And I think a lot of that came up with the talk around Zach Wheeler's contract. And so Jody Mack was on WIP, and he put out a take that I found like just infuriating. And so I'm going to play Jody Mack's feelings on the Phillies and this idea that the window's closing. And I'm going to just offer you some like level-headed thoughts because I thought this was absolutely insane. Now, for some reason, the back end of how I pull things up here has changed, which I don't like. I think we're going to be okay. All right, here we go. I want you to hear what Jody Mack had to say in response to this idea that the Phillies window is closing. Because, again, I found this absolutely infuriating. Let's go over to Jody Mack.
Shame on Jeff Passan.
Too strong.
Where do you come off with the Phillies window is closing?
I agree with that.
That means
right.
to me this year or done.
Yeah, not true.
If you say that this is the only year and then you like more than 50% have to consider a rebuild during this offseason to go forward. No,
not
that's
true.
just not accurate.
It's not accurate.
Okay. I don't know how to break this to Jody Mack. I don't know how to break this to anybody who has the same mindset as Jody Mack. The window is closing. The window is set to close. Now, again, this is why I wonder whether or not there's a mandate from ownership to Dave Dombrowski not to sell off prospects that they have been absolutely reluctant and apprehensive and almost allergic to the idea of trading. But I will point out, Ranger Suarez is an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And anytime you float that to make us,
well, it's kind of it's an embarrassment of riches, because you have Zach Wheeler and you have Christopher Sanchez and you have whatever's left of Aaron Nola and Andrew Painter's coming.
And so these people get in their minds that like, oh, it's fine. You could just lose Ranger Suarez. Well, do you want to trade him at the deadline? They'll say, no, he's one of our best pitchers. Okay, he's one of your best pitchers, but you're not willing to extend him. Okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but sure. So now you're running the risk of losing Ranger Suarez in the offseason for Jack Diddley's squat, where it might actually make sense right now, regardless of whether or not you think you can win a World Series. You probably should trade Ranger Suarez if you're not going to re-sign him in the offseason. Bring back a prospect. Bring back a player who can help this team. Would a team be willing to trade a potential starting outfielder for a great lefty starter who's going to be a UFA at the end of the year in Ranger Suarez? There might be. There might be. And if you're not going to be willing to trade an Andrew Painter because you're convinced that he's going to be like the second coming of Roy Halladay or Zach Wheeler, then fine. I'm not exactly so sure that's true, but you could try. If you're not going to trade Ranger Suarez and you're not going to re-sign him at the end of the year, that would signal that you're kind of all in on this season, right? You are all about dealing with the ramifications of losing this guy in the offseason because you're trying to pursue a World Series. Okay, well then it also doesn't make a lot of sense to not move off the prospects. But okay, so Ranger Suarez is like the biggest name, at least in the rotation, that comes up that I think about and I go, I don't like that. JT Realmuto is a free agent at the end of the year. I totally get it. He's 34. There are a lot of concerns. People saying, oh, he's been kind of mediocre the last 2 seasons. Catchers do regress. I'm not saying that you're going to sign JT Realmuto to an 8-year contract. But would I like to theoretically have him back on another year or 2 deal, maybe at a reduced number? Sure. Will he go for that? Who the hell knows? I do know that if Bryce Harper is going to be your first baseman, and you're going to have somebody DHing, or if Harper's going to have to become a DH for the second half of his career, do you really want Realmuto to be your first baseman? I'd argue he's probably not productive enough, and he's certainly not productive enough at the plate to be your DH. So you don't have an option at catcher that's going to be significantly better than Realmuto, even if you want to argue he's been off his career best and off his career norms. Okay, that's another one. Oh, there happens to be the most important player on the team. The guy who is your DH right now. The guy who seems to be the only player who can hit for power in your lineup, Kyle Schwarber. And I will once again point to this. I think the Phillies went into the offseason. They went into the offseason at the end of 2024 into 2025, and they firmly believed they were going to be able to sell vibes to Kyle Schwarber as a reason to re-sign. And Schwarber's not an idiot. He probably looks around and says, you know what? Castellanos only has a year beyond 2025 under contract. Realmuto's about to come up. Suarez is going to come up. And in fairness, about Castellanos, I don't actually know what he's going to look like in 2026. You have no clue. He's never reached his peak powers as a Philly. We'll see if that changes. You're waiting to see if potentially, will Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott be able to prove that they can take another step and maybe be the guys to kind of fill in the shoes of some of these guys who might depart. They have not proven that. If anything, they've largely regressed in some ways. So the Phillies went in kind of playing with fire with Schwarber. Maybe they thought he was going to have a slow start to the season, and they ultimately chose not to extend him in the offseason. There was the rumor that was floated out there that the Phillies number was comically off from what Schwarber would have expected. Maybe they weren't serious about re-signing him. Well, guess what? If he's the only guy hitting for power in your lineup and you flame out again early in the playoffs, I don't think he's coming back. So that's another hole in your lineup you're going to have to fill. So if Schwarber's gone, Realmuto's gone, Suarez is gone, Castellanos is gone in a year, Boehm doesn't get better, Stott doesn't get better, you still have a hole in the outfield, Kepler stinks. Explain to me how the window's open. What exactly is open about the window? Zach Wheeler, who we can all agree is the best pitcher on the Phillies, we can probably agree in many ways is the best pitcher in the National League. His contract has 2 years remaining beyond this season. You get Zach Wheeler in 2026 and you get him in 2027. And after that, he has said in no uncertain terms, he's hanging up the cleats. He's going off with his family. He will not play again. He's not going to go pitch anywhere else. He's not going to re-sign in Philadelphia. He said 2027 is his last year. Is it a negotiating tactic? Would be a little bit weird this far out, but maybe. I tend to believe that he's honest. 2027's it. Okay, well, who do you currently have locked up in your rotation beyond 2027? You have Aaron Nola. Good luck. You have Christopher Sanchez on an incredible deal, and assuming he is as good as he's been, awesome. Maybe he's going to be your next ace. You theoretically are going to go to arbitration at the end of this year with Jesus Luzardo, who you hope is going to be done tipping pitches, and maybe he could be a longer-term option. He's set to be a UFA in 2027. You don't exactly have this rotation locked up long-term, and your most valuable player is going to be gone in 2027. Again, how is the window not closing? What am I missing here?
Oh, the Phillies are going to be willing to spend money.
Will they? Because the ROI right now has not exactly been great on Castellanos. I think Jody Mack is really wrong. And I do think the Phillies window is closing. And if they are not going to go out of their way to try to figure out a way to bring in more talent to go after it in this very short window, which I very much believe is this year, maybe next year, maybe 2027, if you can bring back some combination of Suarez, Schwarber, Realmuto, you maybe have a 2-3 year window left where these guys are sort of at their peak powers, kind of. Schwarber, I think, is very much still there. Maybe he's at the very end of his prime. Real Muto has definitely dropped off, but I think he's still significantly better than what you have internally. Suarez would be a huge loss. Absolutely. Yeah, it might be an embarrassment of riches right now, but we've seen what happens with injuries in this rotation. All of a sudden, what goes from being the best rotation in baseball can have some holes. And if this lineup doesn't hit, and you're not getting elite pitching, you're not going to win a lot of games. So Jody Mac's wrong. Not the first time, won't be the last. I welcome him on the show. We can debate this.